Good evening everyone. In today's video this is just a short update on the current state of my Linux desktop. This was prompted by the Big Daddy Linux podcast challenge, which is to run BunsenLabs for the week and then obviously report on the findings at the next Saturday YouTube broadcast. And as I use it as my daily driver, I thought perhaps I just give all you folks a walk around the desktop to show the theming and the changes I've made, and also the choices of applications to try and get everything to fit as you would expect. So without any further ado, let's dive in. So this is the desktop. This is the plain wallpaper, as you can see, Crunch Bang Linux. Now BunsenLabs, of course, is derived from and is a continuation of Crunch Bang Linux, the famous lightweight Linux desktop from a few years back that unfortunately fell into largely into disuse because the main dev effectively gave up on the project. But thankfully, the good folks at Bunsen, I think there are now 4 active developers on that. They have a very lively and active user base and forum. Have taken up the challenge, and for the last couple of years have been maintaining the BunsenLabs distribution. It maintains many of the features of the original Crunch Bang. So your Conky obviously sits here on the right. It uses the Tint 2 panel. Now by default this comes at the top on BunsenLabs. I've moved it to the bottom and also changed the theming of the panel as well. More on that a bit later. The other major change I've made is to the D menu system, whereby if you press Alt and F3 on your keyboard, it brings up D menu to search for installed applications and packages. Now, out of the box, this loads at the bottom of the screen and looks somewhat different. So I've now changed that so that it matches the theming I've got installed here, and also appears at the top of the screen with the drop shadow that you can see there. So it's a little bit different. The theme on this system is effectively forked away from ArchLabs. Now ArchLabs a couple of years back developed this, or put together this kind of dark grey monochrome type theme, open box and GTK theme, which I really liked and preferred it to the out of the box default BunsenLabs theme. So I've taken that and made some modifications such that I've actually renamed this version so it doesn't get confused with the ArchLabs version. The tones and the greys are slightly different. The text and the fonts are different. The colours of the fonts are a little bit different in that they are a kind of warm white on the original. They are a kind of silver grey colour, a very light silver grey colour on this one, which I think blends in a little bit better with the overall kind of slate grey theming. So let's ignore the police cars whirring past in the background. Let's dive in and have a look. What I'll do, I think, I'll take you through the menu. Now the menu again is has been heavily customized. So as you can see, it's grey on the background, and it now has, I've actually put green highlighting on as you move down, but also green highlighting on the separators between the various categories here. And what I've done is matched those across here on the Conky. So you now have the system info and the highlights and headings and distribution name here headed in the same green as you find on the menu itself. And of course, again, we've got the shadowing around the side. So let's dive in and have a look. The web browser I've chosen is Chromium. The reason I've chosen that, yes, Firefox is arguably a better choice from a kind of free software Linux perspective. However, it does sometimes give some issues on things like Google Hangouts and Google streaming services, and I tend to find that Chrome and Chromium work better in that regard. And also Chromium, to be honest, takes dark theming far better than does Firefox. Firefox, unfortunately, if you go into some of the text panes and text windows and drop down menus, it doesn't take on the theme correctly and you end up with black boxes on your screen with black text. So there are fixes for that. To to be honest, I can't be asked, so I'm just going to use what works. So this is the web browser I use, Chromium. Now the theme on this, it's a dark theme. It's the one that you can actually get as an extension in Chrome, and it's the incognito theme. So obviously if you go over and you select an incognito window here, so it says new incognito window, that by default on Chromium comes up with this dark theme. But you can of course just add an extension and apply that to your main desktop, and I think it looks really well. It looks really nice if you like dark theming in your browser. So that's what I've got running here, but it works really well. It's fast. Obviously BunsenLabs being an open box based distribution is very light on memory anyway. On this system it uses about 250 meg on boot, leaving plenty of memory for your applications. But you can see here everything loads up absolutely fine. Now I'll just run through this and just give you a flavour of the kind of applications I like to install on this. File Manager. Now, of course, the File Manager on here is Thunar. Picks up the theming very well, I think. I'm using one of Eric Dubrar's dark slate icon themes. I'll leave some details on that in the box below. By the way, any of these themes and styles and config files, they are all uploaded onto my GitHub page, and again I'll put a link below for that. Feel free to take and use and change anything you like. That's what open source and free software is all about after all. So again, I think the grey folders. Now BunsenLabs comes with a very nice BunsenLabs theme which derived from the paper theme. And you can use that. It looks very nice. I just slightly prefer the shape of the folders and the slightly larger, smaller icons here on the left. But I think it looks nice and blends in well on the File Manager. Terminal. I've got some transparency going on in the terminal. I've also enabled the blur function within the Compton compositor. Now it's not a very strong blur, as you can see. If you take this over the text, you will still see the text through, but you can see it does actually blur. Nothing like the blur quality that you get in the modern kind of KDE, but nevertheless it does slightly take off the sharpness of the image poking through from behind. So that's enabled with a few tweaks to the Compton compositor. But of course we've got NeoFetch running here, which is bringing in the information, so it brings in the standard information there, and I've changed the colouring of the ASCII graphic for BunsenLabs on the left-hand side there, so that nice Bunsen blue-green, which you'll see fits in nicely with the theme here. This is a reasonably decent performing machine, not in the first flush of youth. It's a 4 going on 5-year-old Core i7. But a fast one. It's a 3.9 gig quad-core 8-thread K designated CPU, so a reasonably fast one from about 4 to 5 years ago. And of course, when you put Linux on that, you get a better speed performance than the kind of heavy Windows 10. But I've had no problems with it at all. It's got a 250 gigabyte Samsung fast SSD in there as the main drive, and there is a 1 terabyte SSD from Crucial, which holds my music and data and backups, and we'll see that a bit later as well. So there are 2 main drives in this machine, and 16 gig of RAM, which is absolutely ample. To be honest, 8 gig is more than enough unless you're very seriously into heavy video editing or any such like these days, I think. But 16 you should have no problem whatsoever, and certainly I get nowhere near 8, let alone 16 on anything I do. It's running obviously BunsenLabs is based on Debian. It's based on Debian Stretch, and this is the 9.6 version of Debian. It's still Stretch. It's coming up for, I think, the end of year 2 now on Stretch. New one will be released, I believe, Buster. It's Debian 10, kind of Q1 next year, so I've got a few months to go yet for that. But in the meantime, they Debian thankfully issue partial updates and releases between major releases. So we're now on 9.6. And BunsenLabs very kindly updated their ISO recently, so that you don't have to download the year and a half old ISO and then sit there for God knows how long updating it. So very, very kind of them to do so. So that's our terminal. What else have we got next on here? The mail client. Mail client I use is Geary. I need very little from my mail client. I need to be able to read emails and send them, and that's about it really. Nothing else. Pretty much everything I get on here is from the Google account and the YouTube account, which you can see here. This is when people post videos, it's just letting me know. And I have an Outlook account linked on here as well. And I just receive and send. I don't use email that much, so this isn't the most fully featured, but it is the cleanest and nicest looking of all the email clients in my opinion, and it fits well within the theme that I've chosen here on this system. So that is the mail client. That's Geary text editor. Here's the one that comes as standard as before. I've made no changes other than a little bit of tweaking to the color scheme on here, as you can see. But works very well. Really like Geary, nice and simple but powerful at the same time. Now the Office suite, as in the last video, I still use WP Office. I would like to use LibreOffice, but I use Microsoft Office at work, and I find that WP Office is the closest looking and performing alternative to that is Linux friendly. Now it's not open source, but it is free to download and use, and performs very well. We'll just load up the Word. You know, it's how fast that opens. If that was Microsoft Word, you'd still be sitting there waiting about 10 seconds later. But as you can see, it looks very, very like Microsoft Word. And in every way you use this, again, it performs very much like Microsoft Word. I've also got the presentation and database suites on here as well, so they are comparable to the full Office suite. But it works very well, yes, it comes from, I think it's a company called Kingsoft. Yes, it's closed source, and yes, it comes from China. I don't care. I don't trust the Chinese government any less than I trust our own. So, sorry to be controversial, but there we are. Okay, audio player. Audio player is as before. It's Quadlibet. Quadlibet is by far my preferred audio player. It's a fantastic audio player. I just like the look and I like the cover view. And as you can see here, it really does take on the theming exceptionally well. You get this lovely cover view here on the left. Let me just pick something on here and give you, I think I can give you a quick blast if I turn on my speaker system. If you hang on one sec. There we go. So announcing to the world that it's just loaded up. Let's play some of this, shall we? And there we go. And we can flick that to something else. Aretha Franklin.
Now listen here, girls. I'm going to tell you what I want to...
Absolutely. Right, and at the top here you can see we've got you've got some plugins and things that you can add to Quadlibet. Here I've got the kind of waveform display instead of the usual progress bar, which is really nice. But yeah, lovely piece of software, very actively maintained. I think there are usually 3 or 4 releases of this every year. This is the very latest one. This isn't the one that's in the Debian repo. The one in the Debian repo is fine, but it doesn't have this cover view available, so you will need to download the latest version. Now the way I do that is to temporarily add the testing Debian repository, run along to that, download the application, and then quickly remember to change it back to the standard stretch repository, because you don't want to leave it on the testing in case you happen to forget and do a system update and you'll break everything. So just remember, if you do that, change it back to the standard stretch repository. But it's useful to be able to do that to grab some of the later programs. If you do, just be mindful that when you download it, just check the dependencies. If it's trying to download a shed load of crucial libraries that the system relies on, I would advise to back away and not to do any further installations from the testing or SID repository. If, on the other hand, it's just downloading the main piece of software and perhaps one or two non-critical libraries, you're probably fine to do that and then switch back. But just be mindful, if it's pulling down hundreds of megabytes of core system library updates as well as your application, that's a red flag, and I would steer clear of doing that on good old Debian stable. After all, it's called Debian stable for a reason, and too many dips in and out of SID or testing will break it, or very likely break it. So that's our audio player. Music streamer, that is Spotify. Now I like the way that Spotify looks, and again, it fits with the system theme overall, as you can see here. Works really fast on here. I'm going to be controversial. Don't download the snap. Go and download the deb file from Spotify. It's tiny by comparison. It's about 20 megabytes as opposed to, I don't know what the snap is, it's probably hundreds of meg as a minimum, and it will work reliably on any Ubuntu or Debian based system that I've installed this on. And in fact, I've even downloaded the port across to the RPM version on OpenSUSE, and that also works absolutely fine. So don't waste your time loading loads of snap bloatware. Go and download the deb file and enjoy it. Works exceptionally well. Of course, it's Christmas coming up, so we've got loads of Christmas songs. There we go, Christmas party. What have we got on here? Mary's Boy Child, Boney M.
Mary's boy child, Jesus Christ.
There we go.
Was born on Christmas.
Get used to it, folks. 2 weeks to Christmas. It's going to be incessant. Shouldn't be a bar humbug, should I? But anyway, there we go. That's Spotify. So that was music streamer. Media player. This system comes with VLC by default. Nothing wrong with VLC. It's a very nice media player. I happen to think GNOME MPV is absolutely fantastic. It plays just about every format out there. I never have any issue with it, and I think it looks super clean, just like a Geary in its GTK3 garb here. Picks up the theming very well and just works flawlessly. Never have any issue with it, so that's my choice there of a default media player. And in fact, in the OpenBox settings, you can change, in the Debian settings as well, you can change your default applications, you know, your mail applications, your music players, your file managers, etc. And I've actually selected that as the default media player. Video editor should come as no surprise. It's the best of the open source, free and open source players in my opinion, and that is Kdenlive. Now, I've said I don't like snaps and flat packs. This is a flat pack, and it's a flat pack for the good reason that obviously Stretch isn't the freshest and most up-to-date of repos, and the version of Kdenlive in there is crusty and old, to put it mildly. So there are some instances where, yes, you should go and download a flat pack or a snap, and this is a very good example. This is the flat pack. Now I find that flat packs take on the theming and integrate better than snaps on the whole. So this is the flat pack. Works absolutely flawlessly. I've had no issue with this whatsoever with the types of files that that I import and edit. This is mostly these small, short, kind of half an hour-ish length videos for my channel. It's ample for that. And then there's no need for me to go out and look for anything more. Okay, so that's the video editor. Photo manager is shot well. Again, you can see a little theme developing here. It takes on the system theme very well. Looks very nice. You can see the kind of stuff I'm into, which is vintage audio, because most of the photos seem to be that. But a little while ago, I did a former life, some loudspeaker development and design, and you can see here some photos on that. These load up really quickly, and you can just flick through. There we go. This was a product, a 3-way loudspeaker system that I designed and developed some time back, and you can see the prototypes being built. So that's the photo manager. Photo editor, of course, is GIMP. Now this is also a flat pack, again because the version in the repos is quite old, and this is the latest up-to-date version. So everybody knows GIMP. I don't need to tell you much about GIMP, so we'll leave that and move on. Now, so those are the main applications in here in the top section. They're the ones I use most often, so therefore they're the ones that are keyed into, or rather entered into the first part of the menu. They are also keyed on here on the con key to these shortcut keys, along with certain other applications here. So everything I've shown you so far, with the we can just hit the super key plus the letter denoting the application, and it will open on keyed shortcuts as well. Now, audio tools is something a little bit special. Not many people will have this stuff installed. I use it because I repair and service vintage audio equipment. Therefore, I need some specialist software installed. And basically, this is audio measurement software. And if I open one of these, you'll see this pop up on the screen. There's the application. Now, that's actually a wine application. You saw how fast that loaded. It's an audio application used, as I say, for basically squirting test tones into audio equipment, retrieving them from the other side, and then measuring them to make sure that that piece of equipment is performing as it should. And it works absolutely flawlessly on this through Wine, as do the other applications. Now, I'm also testing at the moment Reaper. Now, Reaper is a paid-for professional digital audio workstation, music and music production and recording workstation, and you won't find a Debian packaged version on the Reaper website. If you hop along to the OpenSUSE website and you go along to their community page and you look for requests on there for packaging of applications, lo and behold, you'll find that not only have the good folks among that community packaged it for OpenSUSE, but they've also packaged Debian versions as well, including the latest version. So if we click this, here we are. This is Reaper. Now, this is just testing at the moment, so it's on a trial basis. It costs 60 UK pounds for the full license, which is actually not too bad. Given this compares to some of the best pro software out there, 60 quid as a one-off payment is actually very reasonable in my opinion. And you get about a 3-month trial on it, so you certainly get your money's worth out of it. I've barely used this yet. I've just basically evaluating this to see if the features of this are something I would need. I suspect not, because I really don't need this level of tweakery and manipulation of audio, but it's there if you want it, and just shows that these professional applications run perfectly fine on here. So that was audio tools. Accessories, there's nothing in there really that's going to take anyone by surprise. It's the standard stuff that comes with the system. Under games, I've got Steam installed and Super TuxKart. Steam works perfectly well. We load it up. One thing I would suggest, if you're going to install Steam on BunsenLabs or anything based on the Debian stretch system using the slightly older kernel, is that you install things like Steam and other multimedia intensive, graphics card intensive applications first, and then if you need to add in video drivers, you do it at the end. Do it once you've installed the software. Don't install all the video drivers first and then try to install some of these applications like Steam, because you can find you will get conflicts in terms of your dependencies, in my experience. But as long as you do it in the right order, works absolutely fine. So under graphics, I'll highlight some of these. EOG Image Viewer, which stands for Eye of Gnome. Now you might think that's a strange thing, a GNOME application installed on a lightweight BunsenLabs distro, but it's actually a lightweight application. Don't be fooled by the GNOME word in there. It's just a simple little image viewer, and again, I just like the way it looks. It looks really clean. When you load an image up here, you've got all your image information down here on the right hand side, and it's just nice and simple, and that's the way I like my applications. So where were we? Under graphics, Darktable of course is on here. I won't open that, but that's useful for photo image manipulation. Pinter is on here. I've installed that. Useful as a kind of lighter weight, simpler version of GIMP. Yeah, not everyone needs to run an open GIMP for small editing jobs, and this is absolutely fine. And again, it looks really nice. I like the layout of this. It's simpler than GIMP. Everything's in one place, so works very well. It's in the repo, by the way. It's just in the standard repos. Not the most latest version, but it's good enough. Doesn't have any issues at all. Blender I don't use, but it came as an install option, so I thought I'll try it. Mirage is another image viewer, superseded by GNOME. Screen shooters, you've got XFCE, Screenshot application, and Scrot. Those are simple screen capture, image capture programs, which I won't show, but they work extremely well. Multimedia, right. Okay, we've already seen GNOME Media Player. This is GNOME MPV. Quadlibet we've seen, and Spotify and VLC is on here as well, as I mentioned. I don't use it, but it's nice to have that there as a fallback, because occasionally something might require that. So it's there as necessary. Editors, Simple Screen Recorder. We're obviously using that at the moment to record this video. GNOME Sound Recorder. That's just a very, very simple sound recorder. Literally, you hit a button, ensure that your interface is correctly selected in Pulse Audio, and it will just record your audio. Very, very simple. Some of these GNOME apps are, I do like the GNOME applications outside of the main GNOME desktop. They are simple, intuitive, clean applications on the whole. What else have we got here? Ocean Audio. Now, Ocean Audio is not free, not open source software. It's free to download and use, and there are regularly updated Linux versions. This version, I think, only released about 10 days ago, and you probably get 4 or 5 of these a year updates, so very actively maintained. It's a really nice, simple audio recorder. You literally get your tracks there, your transport controls, your record, your play, your stop, your back, your forward, but also in terms of effects in here, you can go in and you can add compression and equalization and delay and reverb, etc., noise reduction. So a lot of the stuff you find in something like Audacity, you can find in Ocean Audio. It's I believe it's a Qt application, which is why the theming looks a little bit different to the GTKs, but nevertheless, if you select the dark theme within the application, looks very nice. It looks very dark at the moment. That's because we haven't got a file loaded. If we load a file up in there, these panels do lighten slightly, as you might expect. I have a video on Ocean Audio if you want to check that out in some more detail. So let's go back in. OBS, of course. Now that's OBS Studio. Lots of YouTubers use that for their productions. I must admit, I have not yet seen the need to use it, because Simple Screen Recorder and a few add-ons tend to be all I require, but I'm sure in the near future, as things progress, I will be using that. So it's there. What else have I put on here? Audacity's on here, of course. OpenShot's on here. That's an alternative to Kden Live. Not as fully featured, but works reasonably well. Not quite as stable as Kden Live, but it's simpler, much simpler interface. So if you literally just want to put a few clips in, do a little bit of topping and tailing, and some very light editing, this is absolutely perfect. It's great as well for kind of 1 or 2 take videos where you just need to stitch a couple of things together, bung on a header and a trailer, and off you go. It's great for that. So useful to have, and it comes as part of the install script on BunsenLabs, of course. So that was OpenShot. GUVC View, webcam capture, of course, for anyone who needs that. XF Burn. I do have a drive, a DVD drive in the machine here. I do collect CDs, and I do rip the lossless audio files to my collection, so that's very important for me to be able to read them. Occasionally may need to burn one, but very few and far between these days, but it's there if necessary, of course. Under network, browsers, We've got Chromium, of course, in here. Sip of coffee. Chromium private mode. Firefox is on this, although I don't use it. And it's there just in case. And it, of course, comes with the distribution. Worth noting that although this is Debian Stretch, BunsenLabs do maintain their own repos, and you do get latest updated versions of Chromium and I think Firefox. So they do keep you on the latest versions of those, which is good. Latest stable versions, I should say, not development or beta versions, which is useful to know. You can select your default browser down here as well, so choose which one you want to load. Mail we've seen. Telegram is on here. I have that loaded up. Again, it looks very nice. I've got the dark theme switched on, which picks up the system theme extremely well. Zoom, of course, is on here. That's for joining Zoom conferences, becoming more and more prevalent among the YouTube community. As an alternative to Hangouts. Works very well on this. Zoom provide the deb file for you on their website. Just download and install. Very simple. But remember, I recommend you do that before you install your updated NVIDIA drivers, if you need to install NVIDIA drivers. So that is there. Office. Office programs we've just seen. I've got Scribus on here as well. That's desktop publishing software, as you can see. Notes is just the simple note application, as you can see here. Oh, we have a new version. We'll download that a bit later, I think. And that's great for just simple notes, of course, as in title would imply. And this will link across, of course, to the same app if you have it installed on your mobile applications, so your phone and your tablets. These notes will translate across. Excellent. What else have we got? Places is great. These are all the different places on your BunsenLab installation. So your folders, your various recordings, your Steam folders, your videos, your configuration files. Here they all are. Look at this. The great thing about BunsenLab is it does encourage you to go in and to mess around and play and configure and tweak as much as you want to make it your own. And they very helpfully give you these links so that it gives you a guiding hand as to where to go. If you come down here to help and resources, it also gives you links to things like the Debian documentation and websites, the Debian wiki, the Debian forums, the BunsenLabs forums and wikis, the Arch wiki, various sites for OpenBox, Tint2, your panels, your Conky, where to get new themes, for example. And of course the manual pages for your compositor, your menus, and your screen, X, R and R. So there are your Bunsen help files. So they are bending over backwards to give you as much help and assistance as you could need in customizing your desktop. Let's just quit these down here. Where were we? Okay, back down here. Wallpapers. You get the standard ones. I have actually got some here that make that a bit smaller. I've got some that I've added. So these Beam wallpapers come as standard, but I've done some Debian wallpapers. So for example, we apply that one. I've got BunsenLabs in the with the dash of red there for Debian. I've also got some conkeys that match. So if you wanted, for example, to use this wallpaper with the red flash, you can adjust this and install a version of this conkey that has red highlighting on it instead. And there's a high and a low res version of that. This was the original one that I did in the original video. This is an old Crunchbang logo that I kind of superimposed and added some transparency onto what was an OpenSUSE wallpaper. And decraftification services, of course. A nice old Crunchbang emblem. This is from a game called Crisis, and it's just modified with the BunsenLabs logo added. Fabric is a gnome wallpaper, Again, we've got a BunsenLabs logo added at the top there. The rest are for other distributions, or some of them are. This is for Gecko. This is for if you want to run OpenSUSE. I have this one here. This is a BunsenLabs specific wallpaper with the transparent flame added to the abstract background. Some KDE versions of that here if you choose to run KDE. Some more OpenSUSE ones. What else have we got here? Slight different version. KDE Neon. There we go. A version of the green BunsenLabs, but this time a bit more of a blue tinge. So as you can see, there's a number of wallpapers in there, or they're kind of just standard plain dark. You call that racing green. It reminds me of dark green racing cars of the 40s, 50s and 60s. But that's a nice simple one. These are all on the GitLab page, by the way. So sorry, GitHub page. So if you want to download any of those wallpapers, do feel free to go and pinch them, use them, change them, whatever you want. So back into preferences. So that was wallpaper. Notifications. You can adjust notifications, where they want to appear, how long they appear, how they look, what theme they take on. Power management, of course, is in here as well. Under system, what else have we got in here that I have changed? Ice App Maker. This is this has a video dedicated again on the channel. Anyone who's used Peppermint will know that that has Ice application manager installed by default. It's a Peppermint application, and essentially what it allows you to do is take a web application and package it so that it looks and behaves like it's a native desktop application. It's very useful. It doesn't exist outside of Peppermint, but Mark Greaves of Peppermint very kindly made the deb file available, which I've downloaded, and it works very well on any Debian or Ubuntu based system that I've seen so far. One thing to mention is you do need to tweak the code slightly to allow it to work on anything other than Firefox. If you use it outside of Peppermint, so for example, I use Chromium. Now, ordinarily, you would not be able to select Chromium, but there is a tweak you can do to the script. And again, I've shown that in the video, so if you're interested in doing that, please check out the video and all will be revealed. But again, fits in nicely with these. What else have we got on here? Obviously, NVIDIA settings. This is using an NVIDIA 1030 card. It's using the backported driver, so the latest driver in the backports at time of production of this, which is December 18, is the 390. So there we go, 390.87 version of the driver. That's from the NVIDIA backports. If you do install an NVIDIA card, please go to the Debian wiki and follow that to the letter. If you don't follow it to the letter, you'll likely come unstuck and it won't properly install. And also, if you're going to use the backported driver, which I highly recommend, make sure that when you install BunsenLabs, you select to run the backported repos and have those enabled. Otherwise, you'll be stuck with the one in the standard repo, which I think is 384 at the moment. So a couple of iterations behind this one. Nothing wrong with it. I've used it. It works. Seems to work absolutely fine. But if you want the later, well, this is not the latest. I think we're over 400 now. But it's a relatively new for Debian in the Debian world. This is cutting edge 390. So I would recommend the backported version of that. Okay. Play on Linux is just a front end for Wine. As I said, I've got some Wine applications on here, so I use that. Debian Alternatives is where you would go to change the default applications. So if you don't like the supplied media player or the supplied terminal, for example, and you install your own, you can go in and change which default application loads in that section there. System info is as it says, and I think we're about there. That about covers everything. So that's just a very quick walk around. As I say, not much different to the original video, but with a slight update in that there's some theming changes and some tweaks to the theme and the way it all looks. And I hope you enjoyed that. Anyone installing this, have fun. It's, in my view, one of the best Debian-based distributions because they really do look after their user base. If you have any issues or any questions, do hop across to the BunsenLabs forum and ask away. As you asked politely, they're not going to chase you out of the room. They're not going to be condescending. They're not going to be horrid like on some of the forums. You will get decent, reasonable advice to any questions that you might have. So enjoy installing and using BunsenLabs, and I'll quit there, and hopefully I'll see you all soon. Bye for now.